Hi everyone, this is Legacy School Year 7 History, our lesson 29, the last lesson. We will finish the War of the Roses with the second part, and we will talk about the beginning of the House of Tudors. So we will learn how the Tudor dynasty was established, we will learn about the end of the War of the Roses, and we will learn some details about the Battle of Bosworth Field. Let's do a little bit of a revision. There were some very important facts that we learned in our last lesson. We spoke about Henry VI, the son of Henry V. Henry V was, of course, the hero of Agincourt, one of the greatest English military victories. Henry V was a very popular and very famous king. He was very brave and he was not afraid of wars. He himself personally led his army in the very famous Battle of Agincourt. But his son was a different person, as we learned last time. Henry VI did not like wars. He preferred the church, he preferred books. And unfortunately, at the age of 20, he showed signs of madness as well, so he was not a good leader. He was an incompetent king. His wife, Margaret of Anjou, of French origin, was a very strong woman who wanted, of course, her husband to remain the king. At the same time, the Duke of York, who claimed, alongside many other nobles, that Henry VI is incapable of leading the country. One of these noblemen, the most powerful one, was the Duke of York, and his supporters were the Yorkists, okay? And the supporters of Henry VI were the Lancasters, or the House of Lancaster. The two houses started a war against each other. This was called the War of the Roses, which lasted approximately 30 years. As we mentioned earlier, the two houses used two different roses. Lancaster wore the red rose, and the House of York used as a symbol the white rose. Margaret of Anjou, the wife of Henry VI, declared the Duke of York a traitor, and this is how the War of the Roses started. After Margaret and Henry defeated and killed the Duke of York, they wanted to come back to London, but the Londoners did not accept them. Instead, they chose the son of the Duke of York, Edward, as the next king, Edward IV. He was a young king supported by the Earl of Warwick. Edward wanted to become more and more independent and get rid of the Earl of Warwick. And the last drop in the glass, obviously, was that Edward married a commoner, Elizabeth Woodville. And at that point, the Earl of Warwick changed sides. He supported the House of Lancaster and came back marching against Edward IV. Briefly, they deposed Edward IV, and Henry VI gets back on his throne. So Earl of Warwick becomes the kingmaker, the second time he made a king. Although Henry VI becomes king for a very short period of time, Edward comes back and takes back his throne and kills Henry. Margaret of Anjou lives in exile for the rest of her life as a poor princess. Edward IV dies accidentally, and his two sons, the two princes, 12 and about 9 years old boys. The older one would become Edward V. He does become the king, but only for 78 days. His uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, becomes the prince's protector, but he imprisons the princess in the tower, and he makes himself King Richard III. This is what we did last time. Quite a lot of events that we spoke about, and a lot of personalities. Please try to learn and remember these names for the final exam. Now let's continue from this point when Richard, rumors started spreading that Richard III killed the young princess. So the War of the Roses resumes, because even some of his supporters turned back on him and joined forces with the Lancastrians, because they just could not stand the thought of Richard killing his own nephews. Now, Henry Tudor emerges as a claimant to the throne. Now, he was of Welsh origin. His Welsh grandfather married the widow of Henry V. If you remember, Henry V is the hero of Agincourt, and his son was Henry VI. Right, so Henry V dies early, as you remember, and his widow married Henry Tudor's grandfather. This is his claim to the throne. And he anglicized his name, so made his Welsh name sound a little bit more English. Now, Henry's mother was Margaret Beaufort. You can see her in the picture. She was a very skillful politician, and she was very clever as well. She was moving her support between the two houses, depending on which suited her better. Now, Henry Tudor at that time, because of course he was a Lancastrian, he was in exile in France, but his mother prepared him for the future and for his future role as a king. Now, Henry comes back when the rebellion starts against Richard III, and when the rumors about the prince's death start. Then there's quite a bit of chaos in England. Now Henry comes back to England, taking advantage of this chaos, and he marches against Richard III in 1485, although he is unable to gather a lot of a huge army. Now let's take a look at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Sorry, the word battle is missing from all of a sudden disappeared. Anyways, you can see Henry Tudor on this picture. Now the Battle of Bosworth Field was the last significant battle in the War of the Roses. Now Richard III and Henry Tudor met on the 22nd of August, 1485. Henry was supported by Lancastrians and some Yorkists who turned away from Richard III. Now the Yorkist army clearly outnumbered Henry Tudor's forces. But with the help of Lord Stanley, who was the fourth husband of Margaret Beaufort, Henry eventually sealed the victory. And in this battle, the Battle of Bosworth Field, Richard III was killed, and he was buried in an unmarked grave. Very famously, his remains were found in Leicester under a car park in 2015. The picture that you can see here in the screen is already of the new king. Henry Tudor becomes Henry VII, or the first king of the Tudor house. We can also call it the Tudor dynasty, right? So as he had promised earlier, he married Elizabeth of York, the oldest daughter of and heir of Edward IV. Now this way he united the two houses. You can see the rose already combines the white and the red rose. This was Henry Tudor's promise before he became king. He promised he would, if he becomes king, he would marry Elizabeth of York, therefore uniting the House of York and Lancaster. Now, of course, rebellions against the new king did not stop. but they did not even succeed. There were some allies and supporters of Richard III, but they were not successful. And Henry VII's reign is pretty much the end of the Middle Ages in England. A new era starts, which is the early modern history of England. Henry VII succeeds or comes after the House of Plantagenet and is succeeded by the House of Stuart. Okay, so this is how they go. The Plantagenet, which ends with Richard, and then the House of Tudor, and after the House of Tudor, the House of Stuart, or the Stuart dynasty. Dynasty is a family of, or ruling family. Now, I would like you to remember a very famous Tudor dynasty, obviously between 1485 and 1603, started with Henry VII, then his son Henry VIII, the very, very famous Henry VIII, then Edward VI, Lady Jane Grey for a couple of days, Mary I, or Bloody Mary, and Elizabeth I. She's also a very, very famous queen who ruled England for about 43, I believe, years. And she was, as she had no heir, she was the last queen or last monarch of the Tudor dynasty. But of course, the Tudor dynasty is going to be, you will be learning about the Tudor dynasty in year 8. This is how the House of Tudor was established, as we said, by Henry VII, his mother Margaret Beaufort. Please remember her name as well. We remember she was a very skillful politician who prepared her son to become the new king, and who defeated Richard III in the Battle of Bosworth Field. All right, so for your homework, please read pages 74, 75, answer the questions on page 75. You can see famous Tudor monarchs in this picture. The man is, of course, Henry VIII, the son of Henry VII, and next to him, that is Elizabeth I, and the picture down is Mary I. All right, so thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.